let's try that again. Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Hudson. I am from California, and I'm going to be presenting about my state. Welcome, wherever you are watching in the world. I hope you enjoy. So, my name is Nick Hudson. I was born in San Francisco. I'm from San Mateo, California, which is a small city just south of San Francisco. And I've been a resident of this town for 18 years. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at George Washington University in DC, studying international affairs. К сожалению, я знаю только немножко русский язык. So please, if possible, keep the questions asked in the chat in English so I can answer. So where exactly is California? So California is this big orange state right here, as you can see. And Sacramento is our capital, which is why it's highlighted in black here. And San Francisco, where I was born, is right here on this blue dot. It's part of the Bay Area, and the Bay Area borders the Pacific Ocean right here. And if you go across the U.S., you can see there's Washington, D.C. over here and the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. So California, the great state of California, where I'm from, was ceded to the United States from Mexico after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo after the Mexican-American War. It was the 31st state admitted to the Union, and it was added to the United States on September 9th, 1850. There are 39.5 million people who live in California, and it's the third largest state by area, first largest by population, and our capital city is Sacramento. So the California Republic, the flag that you see right here on this slide, California Republic is what California, which was trying to become an independent country after the Mexican-American War, called itself for about a year, and then it joined the U.S. And this red star in the flag represents Texas, actually, and because they were the other state that was aspiring to be independent from the United States. So California is quite a big state, and it has a lot of different geographic features and such other things. So this, on the left, you can see a map of California and its precipitation, so how much rainfall it gets and where. So these hot spots are where there's a lot of rainfall, and then the yellow and red areas are where there's not so much. So topographically, so with the mountains and everything included, you can see California has a central valley, so Sacramento Valley up in the north where the capital is. And then as you go down the state, San Joaquin Valley and the Mojave Desert, and then Los Angeles, San Jose is here in the Bay Area next to San Francisco. And then this is the Pacific Ocean. The highest points are over here, Mount Shasta, Lassen Peak, Mount Whitney, and the lowest point is Death Valley, which is where it gets the hottest in the state of California. So a lot of the photos that I'm going to include in this presentation are actually taken by me because I think it's most important that people see what it really is like to live in California, not the internet version of it. So these are photos from near San Francisco, a city called Pacifica, and it's along the Pacific Northwest corridor of the highway. So Highway 1, which runs from Northern California to Southern California, you can see in this photo here. And these are the beaches. But our state doesn't only have beaches. People often think of California, they think beaches and surfers and other things like that. We have a lot of other things as well. So beautiful sunsets, soccer fields, and in the background little hills and mountains. Baseball are all very popular. As you can see, this is AT&T Park, where the San Francisco Giants play baseball. So I'm going to go around the state and talk about different corners. So now California is a large state. There are many different parts that all have very unique characteristics. So Northern California is known for its redwood trees, which have massive trunks. So these are the redwood trees here, and that's a person for reference. And then this is the Bay Area, so people fishing and catching fish in the San Francisco Bay. The San Joaquin Valley is also a famous part of California, where we consider it the world's breadbasket or produce basket because of how many agricultural products are grown in the San Joaquin Valley and shipped all across the world. So the Sierra Nevada is also famous in California. So here you can see, the beautiful landscape, the mountains with some snow, and this was taken in July. This is also part of the Sierra Nevada and on a golf course. And the beautiful streams and rivers and the railroad track. I'll show you a video later on about this. So Southern California. So this is probably one of the most famous areas and what people most identify with California. And so here you can see that there's lots of buildings, tall buildings, the Santa Monica Pier and boat parking here. And then this is a photo of UCLA. And Southern California. Here, very popular is the palm tree. You see that? And so here's a photo from Southern California that's called Griffith Park, which is near the Griffith Observatory that overlooks the city. And this is a beautiful landscape, and you can see the city in the background and then the Pacific Ocean over there. But Southern California does have a lot of traffic. We do recognize that. And that's one of the reasons people dislike Southern California, because even though you may live a mile or two away from somebody, it could take you 45 minutes at rush hour to reach them because of how many cars are on the road. And on this slide, I'm going to show you a little time lapse of, what it's like. And there's a little helicopter flying away. So much similar to Almaty, there's smog in Southern California. Although it is decreased in its prevalence, it's no longer as common as it used to be. There still is smog today. So here are some more photos that I've taken. So mountains to beaches to beautiful forests. You can find it all in California. Any kind of biome or environment that you'd think you would find, you can. So earthquakes. We are also known for earthquakes. Yes, just like Almaty, we have a very high prevalence of earthquakes in California. So just to name a few, with some of the most dangerous, well, most tragic earthquakes were the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which is depicted in this photo right here, which had 700 to 3,000 deaths. It's unknown how many people died because of there were a lot of undocumented people in San Francisco, and after the earthquake, people were found under the rubble, but well, that's it's quite unfortunate. They weren't actually registered in this statistic. Other earthquakes include the Long Beach in 1933 earthquake, which had 115 deaths to 120 deaths. 1971, or 58 to 65 deaths, 200 to 2,000 injuries. And the Loma Prieta earthquake with 63 deaths and 3,757 injuries. This the second photo is depicting the Loma Prieta earthquake, and this is a highway that used to go along the bay in San Francisco, but they since have torn it down. So answering your question, Abulai, I'm from San Mateo, California, which is just south of San Francisco in the Bay Area. So now on to California's history. So we have a complex history as well. It was not easy to get here by any means, and it all started really with Native American tribes of Northern California, and well, Native American Indians are known for basket weaving, and you can see some of their rituals in this photo right here. One of the tribes in Northern California. They were mostly hunter and gatherers, fishers, and such. I am in California right now. I'm located in San Mateo, California. I was working for the U.S. consulate up until March. Because of coronavirus, we were ordered to come home. So another part of California's history is, well, the missions. And El Camino Real, which runs throughout the state, from Sonoma, which is north of San Francisco, all the way down into Mexico and into Baja California Sur, so to Laredo. Spanish missionaries came to California and Baja California before they were called that, and they built these missions up and down the state, and it was incorporated into this system to try and, well, civilize the Native American Indians and teach them the Bible and put them into communities to do farming. So these missions still are preserved today. So this is the one that in third grade we all get assigned a mission, and then you do a project about the mission. And this is Mission San Juan Capistrano, which is located right here in Southern California, near modern day Los Angeles. And this is the backside of that mission. But the idea behind the El Camino Real, which means the Royal Road, is to connect all these missions by 1 day's walking distance. So they abided by that rule up until, I think it was the San Vicente, because San Fernando looks pretty far, according to this map, from San Vicente. But anyway, so that was the idea, and they connected all the missions. So Manifest Destiny is really influential in California's history, and for the most part, all the Western states. So Manifest Destiny, according to, well, textbooks and such, is the 19th century or 1800s belief and doctrine that the expansion of the U.S. throughout the American continents was both justified and inevitable. So this idea was kind of related to the belief that citizens should be allowed certain freedoms from government control and jurisdiction. And that idea really resonates today. And people who live in more Western states aren't as receptive to federal government regulations, and it's believed that you should be more self-reliant, and many reject any idea to give the federal government any more power. So people moving west wanted to start new livelihoods. So as you can see in this photo, this is Lady Liberty carrying telephone wire, and these are telephone poles, which are very, very popular. You see them everywhere in the West, but not on the East Coast. And this is because it was the easiest way to connect telephones, was to just set up wires above ground and put them across the plains. So here's the Native Americans running away, kind of in fear maybe of these oncoming settlers who are moving west to start new livelihoods. There's a lot of farming in the West. These people are carrying pickaxes and such, guns, and they have horses, and these are like bears, kind of traditional, the buffalo over here. Until recently, the buffalo were near extinction, but they were brought back. So, and then the mountain ranges. I think if you're familiar with the logo of Wells Fargo Bank, this is similar to that. And the railroad, of course, coming west. So, any more questions about this this idea of manifest destiny? So, Sem, you asked a good question. Well, the expansion in the East was not as rapid as in the West. So telephone lines above ground were actually underground in the East because they had time to plan out the cities and plan out the urban areas. But this manifest destiny kind of idea, here I'm going to go back, this manifest destiny idea and carrying these cables and stuff like that, and everybody rushing, you don't really have time to develop underground telephone network, and dig miles and miles of telephone lines. So instead, they just put them above ground because it was cheap, and they knew that there was wood everywhere in the West, and it was not over forested, so they could use the lumber to make make the railroad ties and also these telephone poles. So in 1849, there was the gold rush. So this gold rush in 1849 meant people were flocking to California from all over the world, trying their luck at trying to find gold or strike it rich. So as you'll see in these photos, lots of people, big caravans of stuff, and people were moving their entire livelihoods with them up the mountains to go and find to strike it rich. Well, only few people were actually successful, and in this second photo you can see there's Native American Indians who are working and sifting the gold out from the water, and doing a lot of the labor, while maybe the people who are employing them are sitting around and, well, waiting for the gold to be extracted. This is a willow tree right here. They do exist in California. Then teepees for the Native Americans, and then regular tents for the Europeans. So here's a older photo of people actually sifting for gold. I think this was from the time period. I couldn't find actual information about the photo, but this is what it would look like. The average like miner, and he's sifting for gold in a gold pan, and this is his compatriot or companion in this search for gold. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the railroad. It's a very important part of the West, and first I'm going to play you a video. Turn down the volume a little bit. So this is a video I took. So this railroad runs along a river, and this is a video from near Truckee, Tahoe, which is located near Lake Tahoe. If we go back to the map, we're on slide 23. If we go back to the map of California, you can see Lake Tahoe is right here, and the railroad came from Sacramento to Lake Tahoe, the capital, Sacramento to Lake Tahoe, and it met up to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains. So it was a very, very hard journey across the mountains, but as you can see, there's a marking right here. It's called Donner Pass. So Donner Pass was the lowest valley point in crossing the Sierra Nevada mountains. and it's famous for a story. Well, I'm not going to get too into it, but essentially, the Donner family was trying to cross the mountain at this point, and there was a blizzard, and they couldn't find their way across the mountain, and there was some cannibalism that happened there. So back to the railroad. So the railroad is finally connected at Promontory Point, but it's only after crossing the Sierra Nevadas that it really gets easier or more downhill, because across Nevada it's quite flat, and then you connect it in Utah. So Donner Pass was how they made this railroad go through California towards Nevada. So the railroad itself was largely built by Chinese immigrants, so about 40,000 of which arrived by boat from China in San Francisco during the 1850s. So initially, railroads didn't want to employ the Chinese workers due to racial prejudices, but the Irish workers were requesting higher wages, and the railroad companies didn't want to pay them those higher wages. And if the Chinese workers, the immigrants, were willing to do the work for less pay, and since it was very dangerous, other groups were scared off, and the Intercontinental Railroad, the final golden spike, as they call it, in Utah that was planted. Here, I'm going to go back so you have an idea of where Utah is. So here's the railroad basically through Nevada, and then it met up in Salt Lake City, Utah. So the golden spike was planted there, and this entire section of the railroad from basically Sacramento near San Francisco all the way to Salt Lake City was 90% of the crew was from China. So 90% of the workers were Chinese. Very interesting. And the Chinese government, didn't really help the Chinese workers, so they were still subject to discrimination, and they had only one designated place that they could live in San Francisco, which was Chinatown. And then in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act passed in the federal government, and it banned new Chinese workers from entering the U.S. and prevented Chinese immigrants already in the U.S. from becoming citizens. This law was only repealed in 1943, which is kind of crazy. So, on with some more personal history about California and how it relates to me. So John Steinbeck is actually the famous American author who wrote about, the Central Valley and farm workers and other things like that in California. And he wrote a couple of books. So The Grapes of Wrath is what was his claim to fame. So this book actually got banned by the California government, which is kind of funny, because the U.S. is known for freedom of speech and such like that, but the California government actually banned his book because it was too critical of the California government on its dealing with the homelessness crisis and poverty and such like that. So John Steinbeck is my great-grandmother's first cousin, and he also wrote of Mice and Men, which you may be more familiar with, or like Cannery Row, East of Eden, Trouble with Charlie are all other titles that he wrote. So this is my cousin, actually. So Hollywood and becoming a star. So for many, the prospects of becoming famous as an actor or actress was a beacon for many people around the U.S. to go and visit Hollywood and try and become like a superstar. So America's most beautiful people and most handsome people moved basically to Los Angeles and Hollywood, and that's one of the reasons why the most beautiful people in the U.S. actually live there. So some suburban living is also a really important part of California, and this post World War II move to living in suburbs rather than cities was very popular. So a lot of the U.S. is suburban living. And this interstate highway system, which was created after World War II during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, and the U.S. government made a grid across the U.S., so crisscross across the U.S. with tons and tons of highways. So these highways, they all connected to form this grid and make transportation of goods, or in the case of fighting with the Soviet Union, potentially nuclear weapons, across the U.S. as easy as possible. And one of the results of this is high amount of funding for highways and roads. So that's why you'll see beautiful, beautiful highways and roads all across the U.S. And a lot of people choose, to drive their car for joy here more than any other country, I think, at least. So these photos are from my neighborhood in San Mateo. So adding on to that car culture that kind of exists in the U.S., automobiles and building in California was very spread out. It wasn't all concentrated in a few metro areas like on the East Coast. So if we go back to that map, we're on slide 27 now. If we go back to this map, on the East Coast, the density of population is quite high. So you have Washington, D.C., then you have, over here, you have Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Trenton, New Jersey, New York City, Boston, Massachusetts, Hartford, Connecticut. All these cities, down even to Richmond, Virginia, all these cities are very high in population. So over in the West, you can see there's, it feels more spread out just because there's only the state capitals included, but it is more spread out as well. So even Alaska, just a massive amount of land. Texas. So back to the car culture. So there was a necessity for cars, whether it's luxurious cars like this at the San Francisco Auto Show that I went to, so Lamborghinis, BMWs, Bentleys, etc., or more practical cars but more fashionable. This like older style like Stingray and Dodge and Camaro SS, all these cars would show up and people would have like a get-together meeting just to drive their cars. So In-N-Out Burger is one example of this car culture. So this is an illustration done by an artist who actually was contracted by In-N-Out Burger to make these depictions of what it's like to go to In-N-Out Burger. So drive-in, movie theaters, drive-throughs. Maybe you've seen it at McDonald's. You can drive up to the window and they'll give you your order through the window. But these are all parts of this, like people are in a hurry or they need to travel a long distance. So car culture is very, very important. Here's another example of how it's so beautiful to drive your car. You would want to. I mean, you can go really fast, or maybe you just want to take a joyride through the trees. This is in Northern California, actually. And this is what it looks like. This is no filter on that photo. So the Pacific Coast Highway, it's probably one of the most famous parts of California and driving culture. And this is the logo for the highway. And this is a sunset along the Pacific Coast Highway with a little lighthouse in the distance. But it's just beautiful open road along the coast, and you could super calm, and it's great conditions for driving. So now I'm going to continue with some entertainment. Maybe you're familiar with some California bands or something like that. So I'm going to talk about some bands and music. So Metallica is probably one of the more popular bands. The Eagles are the most popular band. Maybe you know the album Hotel California. That is an actual place. Yes, it exists in LA, Los Angeles. NWA, Straight Outta Compton. Maybe you've seen that movie. That's more like 80s, 70s, kind of, or 80s, 90s rather. Music and hip hop rap movement in LA. The Beach Boys are very popular. And then this bottom photo is actually from Coachella Valley Music Festival. So I went 1 year, and it's a big polo ground, so where they play polo. You know, the game with a horse and a mallet, and you hit the ball through the stakes and such. Well, this polo grounds is where the festival is held, and they have music concerts in all these halls and at these stages, and 100,000 people show up on 2 different weekends, and they experience music. So it wouldn't be a California presentation about me without sharing some of my personal favorite albums. So Santana, I really like that band. This album is Supernatural. Linkin Park, Meteora album. Dr. Dre, his album, the 2001 one, I really like. Broken Bells is awesome. I really recommend it. They're an underrated band. Red Hot Chili Peppers are also very, very popular. So the album Californication, and Kendrick Lamar's Damn album. That's also one of my favorites. So I think there are some maybe cards that you can like look at on the stream. I don't know how it works, but I made like 5 cards about some questions, polls that you can take about the presentation so far. So like maybe we haven't gotten to all the questions, but like what part of California do you want to visit? What's my favorite album? So you can answer those questions now if you so wish. So immigrants. So California wouldn't be anything without immigrants, as well as the U.S. I mean, so immigrants have really shaped how California, well, is so multicultural, so diverse in its population. So in the 1850s, the railroad was constructed by Chinese immigrants, as I mentioned before. Also, so for Chinese, for Japanese, they have a more interesting history, I think, because the Japanese government was on better terms with the U.S., so they were more involved with Japanese immigration to the U.S. before any of the world wars. So Japanese ancestry, this is an allusion to World War II and everybody having to move to internment camps who was Japanese. But I'm going to start with a little earlier history because it goes back before that. So the first Japanese arrived in Hawaii, actually, after the Meiji Reformation of 1868. And then we're finally in California in 1869, the next year. In 1885, the first organized Japanese immigration to Hawaii was organized by the Hawaiian government before it became a U.S. state. And then 1886, the Japanese government legalized immigration out to other countries. So Japanese citizens were not allowed to leave the country legally until 1886. So the San Francisco Board of Education actually in 1893 attempted to introduce segregation for Japanese and American children, to separate them, move them to different schools, but they withdrew the measure following protests by the actual Japanese government. So it's quite interesting. The Japanese government was so involved when Chinese immigrants were experiencing the same discrimination, same division of school children populations, but only the Japanese government actually intervened and said, hey, this is not right, you have to have these children together. So in 1906, actually, that the San Francisco Board of Education successfully implemented segregation for all Asian students, and that was because after the 1906 earthquake, a lot of Chinese people, Chinese immigrants in San Francisco, after all the fires and all the earthquake and everything, they said, oh, we lost our papers, even though they may not have had any. So there were tens of thousands of new Chinese citizens after 1906. So they said, oh, we're done. We can't really tell Asian people apart, so we're just going to ban all Asian students from attending public school. So this legalized discrimination continued until, culminating in the internment of Japanese people, no matter where they were from or if they were citizens, during World War II. And then after World War II, the segregation stopped. So in 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 on February 19th and began the Japanese American internment. And over the course of the war, approximately 110,000 Japanese Americans and Japanese who lived on the West Coast were uprooted from their homes and put in internment camps. So some personal history. I think it was my grandfather's father actually kept the Japanese businesses that he knew of and talked with them before the internment, and said, hey, we're going to lock up your businesses. Don't worry, we'll save them for when you return from internment. It's not a problem. And then when they returned, they had their businesses back. But a lot of Americans, Japanese Americans or Japanese people on the West Coast were not so lucky, and they came back to nothing, or their businesses being overtaken by white Americans. So, and then we have to talk about Mexican and Latino Americans as well. They're very, very important in California's history, because I think it's on level terms between Caucasian and people of Latino descent in California in the population. So initially there were pickers and farmers and people who were working in the fields, and they were putting things on ice box cars to ship across the U.S. In the fields. So in the past, Mexicans, before any of the before I think it was World War I, Mexicans were legally considered white because they were either accepted of being Spanish ancestors, of having Spanish ancestry, or because of the early treaty obligations to Spaniards and Mexicans, they had conferred their citizenship, or accepted their citizenship after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which made California part of the U.S. But this kind of wishy-washy, inexact science on defining race or cultural heritage kind of came up again when Mexican Americans were trying to open businesses or trying to work at the same pay as other white Americans. People weren't really comfortable with that, I'll say. So a lot of organizations, businesses, homeowners associations, local legal systems had official policies to exclude Mexican Americans, even though they were U.S. citizens, in a racially discriminatory way. So for Mexican Americans, the employment opportunities were largely limited to the guest workers program. So that's what this is. These are Mexican or Mexican Americans at the U.S. border with Mexico, trying to get an application for the Bracero program, which was the guest worker program. And that program was started in 1942 as a result of World War II, and all the white Caucasian men in the U.S. or even in the fields had to go to Europe and go fight, or to the Pacific and go fight. So they needed to fill the employment gap, so they invited people from Mexico. And that program actually continued until 1965, most interestingly. So do you have any questions? I put in this slide to make sure I stop if you have any questions or things you want to ask. We're about at the 1 hour mark. So I'm going to continue just and I'll answer your questions as they come in. So businesses and industries. So California wouldn't be anything without its businesses and industries. So some of the most famous companies. So Chevron used to be Standard Oil of California with the same exact logo, just said Standard instead of Chevron here. Southern California Gas Company. Genentech is a company that's in the Bay Area, South San Francisco. About 20 minutes from my house. Oracle is 20 minutes from my house. Visa's 20 minutes from my house. Levi's is in San Francisco. They're 45 minutes from my house. Williams-Sonoma is where my mother used to work. Hollister, Gap, Del Monte Green Beans, or Del Monte Foods is a cannery, and they ship cans of goods anywhere. Jelly Belly, maybe you know this, it's jelly beans. Johnny Rockets, and then Oakley, I like these sunglasses. And then of course In-N-Out Burger. So In-N-Out Burger is, well, I'm biased because I used to work there, but it's the quintessential Californian brand. You can find it in other states, but California is most famous for In-N-Out Burger. So, I mean, you got to talk about traffic. Maybe you're familiar with it if you live in Almaty, but there's a lot of cars in California. So where do people park them when they're not on the roads? Or do people even park them? Yes, they do, of course. So many people in California have garages. So garages could look like this, but that's closed, so they're maybe hiding something. I'm gonna take a sip of water. So yeah. So California, there's a lot of garages. Could look like this, very messy, cluttery mess, and I don't know, you can't park your car there. It's not really necessary to have a garage in California other than to store things in, so a lot of people use it like this and just put junk there. So it could look like this. Or it could look like this, very clean with your Porsche in the garage and beautiful cabinets and everything like this. And okay. So Assem is also asking about language. So Californian English is not different. I think like the entirety of the U.S. There's some like dialectal differences that you can say, like, oh, people say instead of very in California, people say hella, which is not even a word, it's just like slang. Yeah, I don't really know. Maybe people say freeway instead of highway. It's not a very stark difference. It's just a small difference. I don't know. But maybe accents are different. Accents are definitely different in California. What other question? Language. So language, there's basically two languages that are spoken by most people in California. That's English, obviously, and Spanish, because there's so many people with Latin who are Latino, and yeah. So that's what I can say about that. There's a lot of Spanish and English speakers, but there's also other languages. I'm going to go over that later on in the presentation. Um, yeah, maybe California is the hometown of Meghan Markle. Maybe she's from LA, I think. I don't know. Um, what accent do I speak with? I speak with a Californian accent, I guess. Um, yeah, it's more pronounced. Like people can tell I'm not from the East Coast when I go to the East Coast. They're like, "Oh, you must be from the West." And I'm like, "Yeah." Um, so interesting question here. So, what's the main industry in San Diego? So San Diego is actually a military town. It's got a lot of Navy personnel, a lot of, well, I think there's Army there. I'm not really sure. But Army is inland, obviously. Navy is in the port. I know someone who was flying planes in San Diego over this past summer for the Navy. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to continue with this discussion. I'm going to go back a few slides. So if you weren't here already, so people in California have a lot of garages. Maybe they look small, maybe they're large, but garages are a staple. Like everybody has one. It just depends on what you use it for. So it could be like this mess and look like, I don't know, a mess. And you can't park your car here, obviously, because of how much stuff you have. Or it could look beautiful with a Porsche and beautiful cabinets and a sink and all this. Like people sometimes hang out in their garages. Like it sounds maybe a little weird. Like people put a couch in a garage and sit in their couch and play music or something like that. Or they'll do a garage band, like the Apple Music, like music making app. Garage band is an actual thing. There's bands that have started in garages. So yeah. Or you could get knowledge. Like Tai Lopez, if you're familiar with this internet sensation, Tai Lopez, acquire knowledge is how he says it. But he's got Lamborghinis in his garage, and he says, "Oh, here in my garage, I've got a Lamborghini, but you know what I like more than materialistic things?" And it's like materialistic means, well, like cars or something like that, or any object. I like this collection of 7,000 books that I put in my garage. And he's so funny because it's like, okay, yeah, no one would ever say that. Like knowledge is represented by not the amount of books that you have, but what you can do with that. Anyway. So he's a very funny guy. I suggest you look him up. There's a bunch of memes about him. But yeah, so Tai Lopez, well, yeah, he's crazy. But people create in garages. That's the most important thing. And Silicon Valley was started in garages. So on the left, this is actually a famous landmark. It looks like any old like shed that you could find anywhere in the world, but it's actually a historical site because Hewlett and Packard, who were the founders of HP with this logo, actually built their first computer and such like that. And they put it, and they were working all day, all night in their garage, out in this shed. And actually, Apple, this is Steve Jobs' parents' house, and he started Apple in his parents' garage. So, I mean, garages have many functions. It's just how you use the space that makes it what it is. So other companies that were like founded in Silicon Valley, maybe not in a garage, but were Google. Google was started by graduate students at Stanford University, which is also located in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. Cisco, Yahoo, Adobe, Intel are all companies that are in the are from around Silicon Valley. And YouTube actually has a special story, but that was started not in Silicon Valley, but my town. And I'll show you at the end of the presentation, I'll show you where. So, entertainment. So, in California, we're also famous for maybe video games, video game companies, producers that you may know are Electronic Arts, Activision, Blizzard, now they're one company. LucasArts, which made the Lego Star Wars, Lego Indiana Jones games. Roblox is also worldly popular around the globe, but that started in I think it's maybe San Mateo. My city is where Roblox is from, I think. And then Maxis is from a town that's 20 minutes from me. So some movie and animation studios. So Pixar is also from California. Lucasfilm, so the ones that made Star Wars, and then also the animation division that made like the Star Wars Clone Wars series or something like that. DreamWorks is from the Bay Area, so where I'm from. Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers. These ones are all in Southern California, I know for sure. So it wouldn't do us justice to not talk about Walt Disney. He's by far the most famous person who did animation, probably in the entire world. I don't know. Definitely very famous though. So Walt Disney is originally from Chicago. So I'm going to go into a little history of Walt Disney. So he's actually from Chicago. He lived there for his first, I think, 19 or 20 years of his life, studying how to do cartooning. And he started his career as a cartoon artist, and he only so he went to go fight in World War I, but it was, I think, December or some really late in the war, 1918, and by the time he got to France, the war had ended and armistice was over, so it's like, okay. So he came back, and then he was like, I don't know what to do. I want to move somewhere else. I've explored all my opportunities in Chicago. So he moved to Kansas City. So Kansas City, he was there for 1 or 2 years, and he was working for this firm, but he didn't like the methods that the firm was using. So he said, I'm not gonna. I want to do animation where I'm drawing every frame. And the person who was running that animation studio said, no, I know my way of doing animation is better than yours, so I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to redraw every frame. That's too much money, too much time. Walt Disney's version of animation, which is called cell animation, C-E-L. I'll type it in the chat so you understand. Cell animation is actually redrawing every frame, But his boss in Kansas City said, no, I don't want to do that. So he was like, okay, I'm done with Kansas City. I'm going to move somewhere else. I'm going to start my own company. He had his side job in Kansas City was his own firm, and he was working on animation. And he had been working on a prototype of the cartoon Mickey Mouse, but he hadn't really done anything with it. And his brother actually was recovering from tuberculosis in Los Angeles. Even though the cartoon industry was centered in New York, he went to Los Angeles. And this was a massive risk because LA had no infrastructure, no planning for any animation. They didn't know what this was. So he started drawing cartoons. He started drawing cartoons, and he made some of the best cartoons while he was in Los Angeles, away from the cartoon industry and actually in the movie industry. So I'm going to take a drink of water. So Didar, I think, asks how much a garage costs. So it depends, because the HP garage is actually a California historical site. So you can't buy that. It's priceless. You can't buy the HP garage. A regular garage, ones that I was showing, it varies by where you are, but maybe I think you could build it for build your own for like $5,000 or something like that. If you wanted a really nice one, probably 20,000. I don't know, depends. But buying a pre-furnished garage, I have no idea. I'm not in that market. So, continuing on with Walt Disney. You're probably thinking, oh, well, I haven't mentioned Disneyland. Well, yeah, here it is. So this vision of Walt Disney's to create this place where people could have animatronics. So he was like the first person to actually make cartoons come to life. You know, he wanted a utopia, a place where someone could walk around and be transported into the world of Mickey Mouse or something like that. And he achieved it with Disneyland. And so the first photo over here, that's of the park in 1958. And this is what it looks like, or looked like in 2004, so 16 years ago. But this was his plan, and he wanted to make this this place where people could experience his cartoons in real life. And he said, you know, I'm going to make it a different company because I know the investors won't be happy that I'm spending money on something so frivolous, so crazy. Like, why are you making a park to talk about your cartoons? That doesn't make any sense. But he was like, you know, I think there's a demand for this. And he was right. He was right. So Disneyland was located in Orange County in Anaheim, California. And he found this plot of land, I think it was 30 acres. And he bought it. And he put an amusement park there and populated it. And in the first year, I think he had over 1.6 million visitors, which was unheard of for that time. Like, no one had ever made a theme park like that before, you know? There had been boardwalks and fun parks along the water or in Europe or something like that, but this was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. So, and it was his creation. So call him a genius, call him whatever you like, but I think everybody appreciates Disney today, you know, and it's really extraordinary. So what is California in the future? You know, what do we have to look forward to? What technology is there? What's coming? So maybe you know the company SpaceX is run, or the design person, the head of SpaceX is Elon Musk. This is a photo of one of his rocket launches. That's increasingly becoming the center of attention for maybe the world, is commercial space travel, which is very interesting. But today we have lots of wind turbines around California. This is the NASA Ames Research Center, one of 3 NASA sites in the U.S. This is their logo. And then California has this aspiration for high-speed rail and fast movement between San Francisco and Los Angeles, but I think they estimated it would be 33.7 billion, and they've spent 10.7 billion on like 1/20th of the track that they need to build. So it's really over budget. They're estimating it's going to be 66.7 billion now to build this railroad, and that's way over budget and way delayed. I think they said it was going to come in 2033 now, so it's ridiculous. So California has culture. And the traditions are quite diverse. So I'm going to share a little bit about the California traditions. So 60s, the 1960s and the peace and love movement kind of began in San Francisco. So that was the epicenter for this movement. And making love, not war, peace and love. Maybe you've seen this. And then hippies. These were all prevalent in San Francisco. And that culture doesn't really exist anymore, but you can see some remnants of it in Northern California. Not so much in Southern California. It was more like a San Francisco Bay Area. So if you go across the San Francisco Bay to Berkeley, California, you would find people who still embrace this peace and love 60s movement, even though it's 60 years ago. Yeah. So beach and surf culture is also very important. I think this photo is from the 70s or so. Southern California, obviously. And you see all the surfboards here and big camper vans. People are at the beach and watching other people surfing in Southern California. Very sunny. Stylish cars and such. This is also a very retro California site. The long vehicle with the surfboard sticking out the back or on the top of the car of the station wagon. So the gay rights movement is also very prevalent in California, and actually this international terminal for the San Francisco International Airport was named after a gay rights supervisor for the city of San Francisco who passed away, was actually killed by another supervisor on the San Francisco board, or a former supervisor who Harvey Milk had taken his spot on the board or something like that. But he was a gay rights activist, and he was the first openly gay public official in the West. So that meant in the entire U.S. he was the first. So, and this is kind of maybe a gay rights parade in 1969. So the year of peace and love or something like that. So wine country is very famous in California as well. So you see rows and rows of grapes for wine everywhere, and this is a very popular place to spend outside of the beaches, outside of the surfing culture. This is probably the second most popular thing to do, is go to wineries, go and explore the massive amount of rolling hills and valleys of grape arbors and stuff like that, and try wines and stuff. So, and food. So great Californian chefs include Thomas Keller, who's on the left, bottom left here, with his restaurant, famous restaurant, the French Laundry. So that's located in the wine country, as you may, as I previously mentioned, and it's a very modern house, and it's, I think, the most expensive restaurant in the entire U.S. I'm not really sure, but he is the best chef, best American chef. There's no doubt about it. He's definitely the best American chef of all time. And he's from California. And he loves California because the ingredients are so fresh, so vibrant color-wise, and he can have access to the world's ingredients in California because of the diverse growing climate that exists. So, and then on the top we have Wolfgang Puck and his restaurant in Beverly Hills. So California sports. I'm a big fan of Bay Area sports. So anything from the San Francisco Bay Area has a larger logo here. So my favorite teams are the San Jose Sharks, San Francisco 49ers, San Francisco Giants, Golden State Warriors. They're now in San Francisco. But the ones that have big red X's on them, that means that they're rivals, and well, you're not supposed to like those teams. So yeah, they're just rivals. So I'll tell you which sports they play. So the San Jose Sharks play hockey, and so do the Ducks, and then the LA Kings, which have a big X on them because they're a rival of the San Jose Sharks. San Francisco 49ers play football, American football, and the LA Rams, look how ugly that logo is, man. And the LA Chargers, they moved from San Diego to LA 2 years ago, I think. Golden State Warriors are basketball, the Western Conference champions of previous years and such like that. Los Angeles Lakers are not really a rival, but we don't like them. The LA Clippers are another team in Los Angeles, and then the Sacramento has the one sports team, which are the Sacramento Kings. They also play basketball. San Francisco Giants play baseball, as you can see by the baseball. The Dodgers are my least favorite team, so that's why they have, maybe I should make the X bigger because I don't like them. The San Diego Padres, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So that's actually the longest name in the MLB, I think, the Major League Baseball. They want to be associated with Los Angeles, but Well, they're in Anaheim, which is a 30-minute drive from Los Angeles. Oakland Athletics are in Oakland, California, which is across the bay from San Francisco. And the San Jose Earthquakes. I mean, okay, so the reason I think all these teams are way better than the Los Angeles teams is not because, well, yeah, I'm petty, but the logos are awesome. I mean, the representation, they represent California way better than any of the LA teams. So there's sharks in the Pacific Ocean. That makes sense, okay? There's 49ers. That has to do with the gold rush. I mean, that's super Californian, right? Giants are from originally from Brooklyn, so that doesn't really count, but they're still an awesome team. Golden State. Look at the bridge. You can see the bridge, and that totally represents like Golden State. I mean, Golden State is the nickname for California. How could you not like that? But I mean, Dodgers, what does that mean? I don't know. Kings, okay, that's unoriginal. There's two teams named Kings. Lakers, there's no lakes in LA. I don't know what they're talking about. And then the San Jose Earthquakes. I mean, California is known for its earthquakes. How can you not like that? And what is Galaxy? What does that mean? So LA Galaxy and Los Angeles Football Club. Those are such dumb names. Anyway. Oh, so Nura asked, do you speak Spanish? Yes, I speak Spanish and I can understand it. Yo hablo español y inglés y un poquito ruso. So I said, I speak Spanish, I speak English, and a little bit of Russian. So I'm going to share my favorite places and things to do in California. So, well, yeah, I mean, this is awesome. This is Lake Tahoe, one of my favorite places in California. Take a little drink. So, yeah, so Lake Tahoe's probably one of my favorite places. No, it definitely is. And I mean, the beauty of Lake Tahoe is just astounding. So on the bottom, you can see it in July. This is also in July. This is in winter, so this is one of the hikes that my friend took, and he gave me his photo to use. I'm going to play a little video. So again, of the train, but this time I'm fishing, and that's my father over there with the guide, and he caught a fish. And you can see the beauty of California wherever you are, pretty much. And also, I really like Yosemite. So that's the photo that I'm showing right now. Yosemite has beautiful rock formations and has a valley, and it's probably one of the most beautiful nature places I've been to. Another photo from Yosemite. So John Muir is the person, a discoverer, American explorer, who said, you know, to President Teddy Roosevelt. So there were two Roosevelts who were in the White House at various points in time. So two presidents who were Roosevelts. Teddy, or Theodore Roosevelt. So the teddy bear is actually named after Teddy Roosevelt. Anyway, or he was associated with the teddy bear or something like that. I forget exactly which. I don't think he was named after it, but, or the teddy bear was named after it. But so Teddy Roosevelt was taught or told by John Muir, "Oh my goodness, I found the most beautiful place in all of America, all of the United States, and it's in California. And I think it's necessary that we make it a national park." And Teddy Roosevelt said, okay, I believe you. I want to experience it for myself. So Teddy Roosevelt, the President of the United States, goes with John Muir on a 1 week or 2 week expedition to Yosemite, and the U.S. has no president for 2 weeks. That's so crazy to think about. And the U.S. president was in the woods, for 2 weeks and having a great time in Yosemite and exploring nature. And after that, he made an announcement. Oh, this is a national park, and so it became a national park. So another one of my favorite places is actually Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz is near where my father grew up. He's pictured here, and that's my aunt. And it's a boardwalk place where you can see the beach and also go on awesome roller coasters and fun water rides and stuff like that. And you can see the beautiful beachfront here. And you may have seen the recent movie. I didn't include it in the references, movie references, but well, in Santa Cruz, there's a film, I think it was called Us. Maybe you've seen it. It's a scary movie, but it takes place in Santa Cruz, and you see the characters walk around the boardwalk, and I've been to all those places, and maybe it's not as scary for me because I know it's not a scary place. I've been there, and that's not what it looks like. They just use movie magic to make it seem freaky, But it's really it's fun to see places you've been to in movies. So I'll show you some places. So also I like the beautiful redwood trees. Thank you, Nursulu, and Amina. So the redwood trees are also my favorite. I really like them. I mean, you can see how massive they are, and there's one that you can drive through. They carved out. I think they carved it out before they knew that was probably a bad idea for the tree. But it says it's almost 2,400 years old. So this chandelier tree is a redwood tree that you can drive through in California, and yeah. And you can see just the size. I mean, this is a person, and then boom, you have the massive trees. So I like biking. I like playing tennis. I mean, these are photos that I've taken, and going to football matches or soccer matches. Yeah, these are activities that I like. Oh, I like American football as well. I didn't mention that. And baseball, but I already showed a video or a photo of that. So here I'm going to show some famous movie scenes depicting California. So this red car that you can obviously see right here, is tracked on the bridge. So this movie is called The Graduate. So The Graduate is a movie about, somebody who has graduated from university, and they don't really know what they're going to do with their life, and it's the summer, and they're trying to figure everything out and stuff like that. So, a movie that's quite famous. So I recommend watching it. But interesting fact is that in the movie, the way the car is driving, not in this scene, but in another scene where there's no other cars on the road, he's actually driving towards San Francisco, which doesn't make any sense. So, well, actually, yeah. So it was used to illustrate, oh, this person went through San Francisco and is going to Berkeley, which would be on the underside of the bridge, so where all these cars are, and they're actually driving the opposite direction. So that's an interesting fact. And then this movie is called Rebel Without a Cause, and this famous scene is filmed at the Griffith Observatory. So I mentioned that, I think, in slide, I don't know what it was, right here. So this is the Griffith Park next to the Griffith Observatory, and you can see the entirety of LA, right? So if you go back to this scene right here, this observatory and this area is actually looks like this today, but they filmed it and had this scene when there were less high rises in downtown LA. So Chinatown is is another famous movie from this kind of era, I guess, or from California, and a different era. You know, like you can see this is not very pretty. Chinatown does not look like this today, but that's what it looked like back when they filmed it. So I think this is like the 1950s or 60s. Yeah, I'll write all the names of the movies. So right now. So The Graduate. Slide 1. Rebel Without a Cause. Is slide 2. And the third one is Chinatown. Slide 3. Okay. So yeah, so I have another question answer section right here, and feel free to go ahead and ask questions. Take a sip of water. Nafisa, you asked what is my occupation. So I'm currently a university student at George Washington University, and I'm studying international affairs. Okay. So I'll continue and just wrap up the end of the slides, and you can ask questions in the meantime. But so this is what San Mateo looks like. So I'm from San Mateo, as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. And this is a view from the San Mateo Community College, which sits on a hill. So Nazim asked, where do I study? So I study in Washington, D.C. So yeah, so San Mateo San Mateo Community College sits on the hill, but the rest of the city you can see down below. This is the downtown area that I took well, before coronavirus, so that's why there's so many cars everywhere. But you can see this car culture, like everybody has a car, and maybe people are walking around, but you can see there's parking lots full of cars everywhere. Because in California especially, it's very hard to use public transit to get places. Unless you're going a very far distance, it's not easy. And the far distance options are very limited. So you could take a bus or you could take a train. And those are the two things that you could take. I mean, maybe a plane, but that's more expensive. And you can go a lot of places, but it's hard to get out into the rural areas, obviously, because there's no train connections. I mean, I can show you a map and show you the train connections after I finish, but yeah. So this is so this area right here is this is Coyote Point. From where I'm standing in this photograph, it's one of my favorite places in the city because you can watch the planes land at San Francisco International Airport coming over this area, and then this is just a beautiful marshland. Kind of the tide has rolled back out, so there's not a lot of water here, but it's usually up to where the moss is. And this is where I took a photo of the fishermen earlier in the presentation. This is the back alley. And yeah, so the back alley which is behind my house, I really like it. It's very unique, and you can see the telephone poles that I was talking about earlier. They're everywhere, and I mean they're really ugly, but that's just the reality of what it's like to live in the West. Is you see telephone poles everywhere. On the East Coast, you don't see that too much. So. In the cities, they don't really have it. Just because, I mean, you're planning your cities, but outside of the cities, like in the residential areas, they have this. So, so we have a Japanese garden in our city. It was donated by our sister city, which is Toyonaka in Japan. And we have a significant Japanese American population in San Mateo, and well, they donated this garden as a gesture of a good gesture and a gesture of friendship. They have koi pond here in this garden, and it's so beautiful. And I mean, you can see the Japanese style architecture and the laying out of the rocks, and there's a pagoda in the corner and stuff like that. And it's not pictured, but it's really beautiful. So our relationship with Toyonaka goes a little bit beyond that of other cities, because Toyonaka is a city of 400,000 people in Japan, and I mean, people from San Mateo know a lot about our sister city, unlike other cities. I mean, I think Almaty has a relationship with a city in Arizona, maybe not Phoenix, but it was some other city. But with Toyonaka, we share a love for Little League Baseball. So every year there is a Little League Baseball game played between a team in our city and a team in their city. And every other year we have an exchange of teams. So it goes, it switches off who hosts the tournament, and they play 5 games over 5 days or something like that during their visit. And my Japanese American friend growing up, I'm still friends with him. He played on the Toyonaka baseball team and spoke Japanese with the players, and had a really great time when they came to San Mateo. So I'm imagining you probably want to know what an American high school looks like. So I'll show you a few videos of what it looks like. So this is an American football game and the kickoff. So yeah, so that's an American football game. A lot of students show up. These are the cheerleaders for the school. This is the opposing team's school, and their fans. We have floodlights on, and I was sitting with the Aragon High School, which is where I went. Our fans. This photo is from a cooking class that I took. We made Thanksgiving dinner, so Thanksgiving is very important here, and I took a more advanced cooking class, and we have kitchens in our high school, so we made carrots and turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes, gravy, this jam and such. And here we have a grill. So this is one of our student faculty members. He was grilling for the barbecue club at our high school. So they had a barbecue once every month, I think. And then this is a little video of our quad, our area in the school. So there's 2 redwood trees and a grass area and such, and a pool over there, and all the classrooms around it, and the faculty staff area. So the pandemic in California is not doing that great. I mean, it's better than in New York. That's all I can say. We're ordered to stay inside as much as possible, and that's basically it. Thank you for your question, Damir. So San Mateo County, this is my county. So in the U.S., there's a by city level of jurisdiction, and then there's also the by county, and then there's by state. So all these are counties, different counties in the U.S. They're not equal in size because, I mean, the populations are different everywhere. But this is a very interesting map to look at. So if you look at the map of race and ethnicity by tract, so places where people live, the percentage of white race people in my area is quite low, actually, in comparison to the U.S. So over here you see like there's 1% white people in the white areas, and then this kind of tan-ish, that's like 35 to 52, and then this is around 72 to 74% white. And then for California, this is the demographics. So race and ethnicity in my county. So this highlighted portion. So we have 40.4% white population in our county, which is slightly above average for California. Hispanic, we have slightly below average for California. So we have 24.6, and California has around 39.5% Hispanic, maybe. And we're below average for our Black American population, and way above, 2 times the average for Asian. It's 27% Asian. And then mixed race is quite high, as well as other. So we have Pacific Islanders in here, and people from I don't know, Pacific Islanders and other like indigenous groups for I don't know, Native Americans probably in here, and mixed races, people who are maybe married between and have children with Asian Hispanic or Hispanic white, and then they'd be counted in here. Well, this is non-Hispanic actually. So anybody who's white and African American, or white and Asian, or such. So. And then for California, in comparison to the U.S., we're way below average for our Caucasian or white population. So on the U.S. average, it's 60, maybe 3%, and we have 38.4 in California, and about 38.1%, so way above average for Hispanic, and Asian is quite high, so 13.9%, etc. We can go more into depth on statistics if you like, but I think I'm coming up on the time elapsed for this presentation. Last slide. So Amichis, this is a famous photo. Maybe you've answered the cards or something like that, and you looked at them. I put out some cards so you could answer like survey questions or trivia about the presentation. But this is one of the, it's a very famous building, and you may not realize it, but this is one of my favorite pizza restaurants. And then this is a Japanese cuisine. I think it changed into a ramen place now. But up here is the real reason I'm showing you this photo, because that's where YouTube started. So YouTube was actually founded in San Mateo, in this building, above a pizza shop. So pizza shop that I grew up going to, a pizza shop that I always order takeout from, and it's quite an interesting history. So I don't know if you have any further questions, but I'm going to go back into the statistics section of I have a statistical atlas about California, and we can just look through this if that's of interest. So if you go to national origin, so you can check by county subdivision or by tract, which is most interesting, I think. So you can look at Europe, so people of European national origin, so people who are born in Europe who live in San Mateo County, this is where they live. So at most it's like 13.6% in one place, which is super small. I don't even know where that is. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where that is. And like European descent or people from Asia. A lot of Asian population is in South San Francisco. So South San Francisco is actually part of San Mateo County. So, and that's the Bay, San Mateo Bridge to go to the East Bay, and this is the Dumbarton Bridge. Yeah, so a lot of Asian people live here and here, so you can see the percentages. And then we don't really have many African people. I guess 4.28% in that area. I don't know where that is. Australia, I guess we have immigrants from Australia. I didn't know that. And then from the Americas, so people born in South America or Central America or something like that. So anyway, that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions before I sign off? I'm gonna stay on for another like maybe 5 minutes to see if you have any questions for me, but I think that's it for my presentation. Hope you enjoyed. And I guess go follow if you're not already following the American space in Almaty. I think I'm gonna look on my phone, see what that is. AS Almaty on Instagram, or Mission Kazakhstan. I don't know. Look out for our events in the future. And you can follow me at my personal account if you so wish. Alright, so I'm gonna end the stream in a minute or two. There are some outro slides, I guess.